You're pretty good. So, hey everyone, my name is Andy Hamilton from Manaaki. Just a couple of housekeeping things to do this morning. First, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Insta and the Talk, even Twitter, and come join our community at manaaki.io, which is a pretty epic small business community here in Aotearoa. Welcome to my guest today, Simon Che de Boer, Virtual Reality Director, Chief Visionary Officer. I want that title. I don't think I'm that visionary, but I want that title, and founder. And here's a funny thing, right? One of the gifts of lockdown 2020 is that Simon and I met, ironically, on a group tech community call out of Australia. Remember Nikki? Nikki connected us, and there you were on that call.
Yeah. No, that was buzzy. It was a nice little distraction from lockdown.
I feel like I know you. Like, I feel like I've known you all my life, and it's only 18 months.
Well, the last 18 months have felt like a lifetime, man.
What's one word that describes that last 18 months?
Isolation. Travel bug, missing the sound of an aeroplane engine.
It's not you wouldn't call it orgasmic, would you?
The first one was great. This last one, not so much. First one was fantastic. I really got on this like health buzz, and was really kind of like, this is nice. Like, there's no noise, and being in the city. But the second one it's not the same. It's not the same.
It's dragging on. It's like a low intensity hangover, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah.
So, what do you think of this meta world?
If we're talking about Meta the company, or are we talking about Meta as in
the kind of like the Web3 metaverse, AR, VR, like that whole like you've sort of been, and we're going to get into the your background.
Yeah.
But like, if you just like face on looking at how it's all sort of starting to blow up and go crazy for the general populace.
Yeah.
Like, do you sit back and go, oh yeah, whatever? Or do you go, wow, this is actually real?
Yeah, no, look, I am a little bit cringe on certain aspects and certain hype that has kind of carried over with it, because we've had different words for this over the years. I mean, I'm a 90s VR kid. I was kind of really always into that, always into BBSs and good old bulletin board systems and pre-internet stuff and chat rooms and all that kind of jazz. FidoNet. So I've kind of had the history since I was like friggin' 11 years old, running on this stuff. And the novel itself is quite dystopian, to be perfectly honest. So my concept of the metaverse is it's really the idea of it really should be open.
So talk to me about that. When you think of your vision, because I know you've been thinking about this a long time, right? And you've been absolutely at the forefront. So when someone says, hey, at a barbecue, like, what is this fucking metaverse thing?
It's really just this idea of transferable assets and states and kind of open platforms between different mediums. It doesn't have to be specifically VR, AR, XR, all those things that end with R. There's been really active metaverse style communities for years now. I mean, the Wave, which was an amazing dance party / no offense, virtual VR drug taking experience.
Virtual.
My mates were running out in LA some years back, and
virtual.
Virtual, yeah. So you get to take virtual pills, and it just does weird things to your headset, and that kind of online community. Weird online community is just going one step deeper to what we have as the means of the internet. I mean, the metaverse and the internet. I mean, the internet is really just migrating to a metaverse. You could almost say they're not really that separate to each other. But the concept of the metaverse is something that is open, and quite frankly is, no one. I mean, we joke about how Facebook's called themselves Meta. It's like a company calling themselves the internet. It's not.
So you think it's a dick move?
Oh, it's a fucking dick. I'm sorry, my French. It's an absolute dick move. And honestly, us OGs in the community, like the backlash has just been phenomenal. Because we've always wanted to kind of, produce stuff that's open and quite frankly, not cheesy. I mean, you only need to watch the presentation video of the actual whole entire thing just to, it makes you feel, I mean, if you base it on the original book, it really is just, you couldn't, it's stranger than fiction. You couldn't make this up. You have this, you have this kind of oligarchy of a company trying to claim meta, and the whole original book is all about how, it's very Ready Player One in the sense of this future where people are just using the metaverse to actually escape the reality of life.
What excites you about the metaverse? Like knowing that, like you've been playing in and around this.
Yeah. Personally, I mean, especially in current times, the idea of just being able to travel virtually. I mean, it's, so obviously I'm more about real world encapsulation and placing this in a meta environment.
Can you unpack that? What real world encapsulation means into the, meta?
So allowing us to experience real locations in a virtual space.
Is that easy to do?
Oh, I'm considered one of the best, if not the best. So it'd be a lot easier if we're a bit more oiled. I won't lie. But there's now, I mean, like, we were doing digital twins years ago. I mean, like even the work that we were doing back in 2016, we haven't seen a level of quality that has kind of met to that standard yet. And I think digital twins have a really good place in the metaverse because, quite frankly, people do actually want to go to Paris occasionally or check out, ancient tombs in Egypt or just be standing on a beautiful mountain on the top of New Zealand, Aotearoa ourselves, we have such amazing sites that we could be essentially distributing to the world as a teaser right now while everyone's struggling to get through it all. You know what I mean?
Now you are known, you are definitely known as one of the world leading photogrammetrists.
Yeah. It hasn't paid the bills recently, but I'll tell you that being stuck on an island for 2 years has not helped.
What is that how you got into this world? Although you sort of talked about in the 90s you were into gaming and all that sort of stuff, but photogrammetry is the process by which you take real world, like Tutankhamun tomb, and you turn it into an environment in the metaverse, right?
Yeah. So it's really progressed over the last few years due to the event of, obviously GPUs getting a lot faster. I mean, photogrammetry actually originated from like 1858. It was originally used for like bridge building and things like that. So, doing telemetry data, I guess you'd call it, or, mapping, or, you need to know the length of something or the height of something. So you'd get two photographs and you'd do correlation of parallax and then obviously in the 90s, there was some amazing stuff that MIT were doing. And then we obviously had The Matrix. Even The Matrix, the movie, used some photogrammetry techniques in the day. And then what happened is basically, come 2014, I mean, the reason I got into it is just ridiculous. I mean, obviously why, but, for the audience here, it was a matter of, my home was arsoned on my 31st birthday. And it was a real tough time for me. And basically I went through that and correlation of other events took place that I won't get into, save it for the book. Basically, I lost something that was really important to me. And so I've been kind of a geek in the 90s, like Gibson Group, like pre-Weta days, when I was like 9, 10, I had my Amiga 500. I was really into doing some crazy stuff on this machine back in the day in 3D animation and stuff. And so I did have kind of a back history in it, but I was like, I remember this TED talk I'd seen in 2008 where they had this thing called photosynth, and it was basically this thing where you could take multiple photos and triangulate, between the photos. And so I was like, well, hey, can I do this with all my old family photographs of my home? And so I had no background in this. I was literally a drummer and a singer in a band. And so if you ask me about why I went from graphics to that back to graphics, I just had 20 years of being a bit of I discovered music and girls basically, and so I had a bit of a sidetrack, you could say. But then after this experience that me and my daughter went through, I really just wanted to see if I could recreate the house to deal with the post-traumatic stress that was a result of the house fire. And I'd known that the American military had used this to deal with soldiers in Iraq and all that kind of jazz. And so it became this little passion project. So that's like 2013. And then 2015, like I'm just producing the stuff out of my bedroom, and people are just like, this has to be like a handycam, or people didn't actually believe that the work that I was saying was actually real-time generated in a game engine. And I'd never been on a plane for 35 years of my life, and Dana Cooley of Epic Games, the head of marketing, just wired me 20K, which in my world, being a beneficiary at the time, invalids benefits, that's a year's worth of salary for me. But that's 20K US, so it's actually more than a year. And so I jumped on my first plane and just went overseas and went to LA and met a whole bunch of
How was that?
Oh, it was freaking nuts, man. I mean, like, to go from like literally being a kid from Levin to, traveling 120 times in 3 years, it was pretty nuts. But once again, to have one extreme to another extreme and then have lockdown hit just as hard, it's been it's been difficult.
when we think about creating, so I'm new to this game, right? But I learn, I try and learn as quickly as I can. Maybe not technically that well, but NFTs. There's lots of thin NFTs, but there appears to be this move in the metaverse world to creating a lot more depth in people's experiences, right?
Yeah.
And that is going to lead to the need, that's going to be games, that's going to be environments, that's going to lead to an increased need of production.
Yes.
To get those environments. And
absolutely.
And that's going to be hard, right? Because Fluff World has got their burrows being developed right now, and I don't know what the units of input are required to make those burrows work, but I can also see for those players who can create photorealistic physical environments and drop them into gaming environments.
Yeah,
that's going to be epic.
Yeah, I mean, that and virtual studio production. So this is where we've really been hammering. So look, I mean, the experiences we produce, you have teams of like 20, 30 overseas, 3 to 6 month timelines. I've been pumping these, I pump out experiences in days. And it's basically because I was so resource constrained in the past, I just took a different approach to others and had to that whole number 8 wire New Zealand attitude of don't work harder, work smarter. And so, we've been really trying to work on automation. In saying that, though, we've had quite the backlash as a result, because many of the techniques we're doing, are disruptive and cause other certain entities not to really need the number of manpower that they have or the number of resources that they have. So, because of, using things like deep learning, essentially a single individual with our technology in a day can produce more than what, let's say, a certain major, massive, mega library can do in 3 months. And so we've really, I knew we were going to have concerns years ago when we were bringing out this automation tech. I knew, I mentioned it in my TED talk 2 years ago. I knew there was going to be a backlash, but I just did not realize it was going to be this close to home, or from certain parties that I've known very well over the years. But
do you think this blockchain world, the metaverse world, the Web3 world changes the control thesis that comes from the Web2 world?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, Facebook is dead in the water as far as I'm concerned. But losing their audience pretty rapidly. I don't think their platform's going to transfer very well over to the metaverse. They might call themselves Meta, but it's, in my opinion, it's mostly damage control. I mean,
who are the other major players?
It's a really personal note because I've been deeply invested in all of the major players, as you well know. Especially recently, I've been having a little bit of I feel like a kid in a custody battle. I know, I really do. Like, you know, here I am.
That's not so good.
Here I am just trying to manage lockdown, and I'm literally, you know, talking to the top brass of all these companies, and no one can work out what to do with me, basically.
Epic is one.
Yeah. So,
Unity.
You know, yes. Well, obviously, I was in discussions with Weta when that whole thing happened. Weta were very clear that they love me and they love my work, and I had Joe Marks, the head CTO, validate the, you know, the white paper and the technology and say this is fucking amazing. So I mind my French.
Don't worry about it, mate. You don't need to apologize.
But yeah, no, you know, but he explained in non-certain terms that I'm a conflict of interest. I love you, but you're kind of in bed with the enemy, and I didn't realize what that meant at the time up until a week later when obviously the big acquisition happened here in New Zealand. So I've been stuck in the middle of it all. You know.
So did Unity buy Weta because of the production capacity?
Well, I mean, Weta Digital has some assets. You know, they produce Maori, which is a fantastic package. They've produced a number of really cool internal tools. Yeah. I would argue that they are seriously lacking some of the tools that we have, which is why we're having this discussion. But you also got to realize, you know, I've obviously, you know, been essentially a poster child for Epic Games for the last 7 years. Yeah. But what I've discovered is, I'll put this in the nicest possible way, is loyalty is nothing unless you have it in ink. And
that's okay, Simon.
Yeah.
Because you got to look after Moo, and you got to look after your family and your team, right? And you know, sorry about that. That's all my dogs, not my dogs. It's like the neighbours' dogs going. You know, you've got to.
Yeah, well, put it this way. I reneged on a few pretty decent offers because I was naive and convinced that loyalty was strong. And what I've discovered, when I mean decent offers, I mean like I've talked to everyone from Amazon Studios to Netflix to all these players, but I was a little bit naive in my approach, and this is why I'm really kind of coming to this fruition now that basically I'm looking at open sourcing everything we have. Because cool. At the end of the day, I just want this technology to be out there and be able to be used by everyone. And when
you say technology,
yeah,
how would you describe what is your tech?
The automation of digital encapsulation of locations and being able to extrapolate true fundamental physically based rendering variables of data. So if you right now need to go scan a location photogrammetry wise for a VFX product, or, you know, the Mandalorian, or any of these kind of experiences, you know, you need a team of artists to essentially go in and paint out all the shadows. You need a team of artists to do what is called creating roughness maps and normal maps. This has to be manually done in its artistic interpretation. Now, we've been demonstrating for the last 3 years that we are able to automate that process. You know, where what would take someone 8 hours to do a single texture, we can do in 2 seconds. It really is that simple, because there's no weave. It's just complete cloud. It's just compute. We trained it on millions and millions of images using an augmentation methodology that we refer to as JRT, just in time. And as a result, this thing, it's not ground truth, but it is 95% to ground truth, which means that then if someone needs to come in later, they only need to do a fraction of the work that they would have to do otherwise. So, for instance, scanning an environment, let's say a Japanese alleyway, right? You know, it's sunny or it's overcast, you get baked lighting. We've demonstrated that we can remove all the shadows, remove all the direct shadows, but most importantly, when it sees, you know, certain kinds of plants, it knows that they're this certain kind of shininess. When it sees certain kinds of concrete or asphalt, it knows it's this kind of shininess. When it sees billboards, it knows that it's plastic. And so instead of an artist having to go in and do all this, the tool that we have does it automatically. So that's one of the tools we have. Another one is with photogrammetry, is that we are able to look at the photogrammetry data and fill in missing data. Think of it as like, I don't know if you know Photoshop with its content aware filter technique. We're essentially able to train the system on images, and we train it with its own data set by just basically removing things, and then we use that same data set to then fill in the details of something where things are missing. So what we refer to as occlusion issues. And so look, this is the truth. I've been extremely loyal to Epic and capturing reality, and I've been trying to push this for the last 2 years to the guys, that there's a conflict of interest because of an acquisition they did 2 years ago. And it's that simple. And so I've been kind of carrot and strings, I guess the expression is, for a while. And as a result, I've had to renege on many other offers I've had because I was under the illusion that it was a given, basically. And so as of today, this is why I'm basically announcing that everything we have is open source. We're going to put it on GitHub in the next few days because, quite frankly, this thing has just been sitting there being shelved.
Yeah, you want people to use it, right?
I want me to be able to use it. And what I mean by that is I need to look at third-party photogrammetry software that is also open source to embed this into, because I've been trying to embed this into my favorite package, but the pushback has just been too much, and I'm tired. I'm over it. So,
do you reckon?
Yeah.
One of the things that I observe in this Web3 community is that people, they kind of rise up because they see there's no central control thesis system anymore, right? And so you've got this fervent of activity coming in from people going, finally, right, all these bastards are gone and it's less control thesis. But as I kind of uncover more, I still have this little boy feeling that goes, is there room for the little person?
Well, I mean, Microsoft's pushing hard with open source, and they've done really well. So, we got to give credit where credit is due. Look, I mean, I got to be really clear about this. I think Epic have done an amazing job. I mean, I wouldn't have been the biggest fanboy for the last 7 years if I didn't think they were incredible, right? But all I'm going to say is the more companies you acquisition, the more potential conflict of interest you introduce. And
hey, let's just shift a bit.
Yeah, let's go. Yep.
Brands that inspire you.
Yep.
Are there any brands that, and that can be any walks of life, that you go,
Well, I'm being really impressed with Pimax recently. I mean, are we talking about brands in the VR community, or are we talking about brands?
Just generally, like any brands that inspire Simon on a daily basis, or whether your work or in your life, that you go, I freaking love that brand. What's Pimax? It's not like a meat pie, right?
No, Pimax is a Chinese-based VR company. And just out of transparency, I guess I'm a bit of a evangelist for them. They're really pushing the high end. So, we have Oculus or, Meta, with the Quest 2 consumer headset, lightweight, portable. Pimax are doing quite the opposite. Like, the field of view they have, you can't see outside of the barriers. You don't get the kind of tunnel vision that you get with the smaller field of view headsets. It's extremely high end. Think of it as like the Tesla of headsets. I would say its graphic fidelity is the highest of any.
Can you buy it?
Yeah, it's right behind you. Well, I mean, the one I have is a prototype, but you can buy, other versions. Yeah.
Companies or brands that you think are going to die in the next 5 years?
I wouldn't want to say that. To be perfectly honest, man, I've probably got. Hey, dude, you said this was going to be a controversial conversation, so I'm really trying my best to not be too controversial.
Go on,
we haven't even got started with Facebook and the whole MLK thing. So please, I'm really trying to.
We're gonna leave that one aside, aren't we?
Yeah, I think we should. Yeah. I think that's a good move.
Okay.
Brands that I think would survive. Yeah. I think open source is really the way to go, and I think there's going to be a lot of third-party engines and third-party Web3 style viewers. Obviously OpenXR and other such technologies in the VR community are really going well right now.
Do you think Shopify? Do you think Spotify will survive?
I think Spotify needs to adapt a little bit. Like, so I did my thesis back in 2011 on a thing called Hush FM. And I think the problem is with Spotify is it's not engaging directly enough into the community. You need something that's kind of like a mixture of SoundCloud and Spotify in one package, but have that immediate community kind of feedback loop that you get from, I think Spotify would do really well if it started focusing on geolocation and having third-party narrative introduced into their stream. And so this is what we proposed back in 2011 with Spotify and the EchoNest in my thesis. It's a really cool idea. It's basically Spotify, but in between the tracks, you're hearing local commentary in your community. So let's say there's an incident down the road, or God forbid a tornado or something crazy like that. You are listening to your tracks, but you're actually informed in real time of what's going on around you. So it's like Spotify meets local radio, basically. Yeah.
If you think back, when the metaverse was really all hushed voice, like there was a few of you just hanging about it and playing with it.
Yeah.
If that was a song back then, is there one song in your mind that would describe what the metaverse was then? Or is that a bit unfair to ask?
That's, I'm terrible with words.
You're good with music, though. You like music.
Yeah. I mean, I've got 3 albums, man. No one realizes that. It's crazy. Like, I went to this like VR rockstar status, in 2016, and no one realizes that there's a reason why he probably looks like this. Like, I was a drummer and a singer in a band. I was doing Phil Collins for ages. But let's 3 albums on SoundCloud, man. Yeah.
Let's ask a different question then.
Yeah.
I think quite a bit around our creative artists in New Zealand, the musicians, the artists, our Maori and Pacifica, and people from diverse communities. And I start to go, right, this kind of, this 3D, this metaverse world, like, are there opportunities for them?
Don't even get me started, man. I've been trying to run with this with Creative New Zealand and Tourism New Zealand for years. So we, on top of obviously the photogrammetry and all that amazing stuff, so the King's Arms used to be just down the road from me.
Yeah.
And they tore it down, and now there's this big apartment complex, right?
Yeah.
I ran with Heritage New Zealand and others years ago saying we need to scan this in advance before it gets knocked down, because at some point in the future, people would love to go back and watch She-Heart again back in the 90s, So this idea of recording the past, we're in a position right now, and I've talked about this on many long-form podcasts where, I said back in the day, I was in LA, and I was like, we could, from 2018 onwards, we could essentially be recording an actual accurate form of the future, because we can embed this stuff in conjunction with a blockchain methodology, which means that it's no longer the victors that write the future, it's literally just the future. So this idea of actually recording moments in time and having it essentially embedded with an artist rights management system or blockchain methodology means that no one can alter the future.
I know that, last year when the lockdowns happened, you talked about going out and shooting some extraordinary New Zealand scenery and tourist locations and putting them up on the web.
On Steam, just put it on Steam.
Right, to enable people offshore to experience the beauty, right?
We like to say the teaser to the trailer, the teaser to the movie. Like, so it doesn't stop people from coming to New Zealand. It will just allow people to actually experience the taste of New Zealand while we've all been in this unique situation for the last 2 years.
And I was captured by it. I was like, this is freaking cool, right? Now, you got to know when you pitch that, like, to Tourism New Zealand, Creative New Zealand. When you reflect, why do these organizations say no? Is it a shit idea? Are they afraid?
look, I mean, you got to understand, most of my money has came from overseas. Like, it's been Nvidia, it's been Epic Games, it's been Amazon Web Services, it's been EPFL in Switzerland. You know, it's been, you know, in saying that recently, Callaghan Innovation were really good to us a year back. But it was only because we got the Epic Games money to begin with. I'll be honest about that. So, you know, we are a little late to the party.
But why do you think Tourism New Zealand turned it down?
I don't even know if they got the proposition. I don't even know if they really heard the message. Because you know, we have technology, not just the photogrammetry of these environments, but we're also able to volumetrically record people. And so we have this lightweight RGBD style volumetric technology that can be streamed on a 4G network. You know, Frig 5. You know, I mean, come on, Andy. We pitched the Spark this. I mean, this is it's an amazing. It would be. I am perplexed in the time of COVID, how hard it has been to convey my message effectively to parties. And I love it now that everyone hears the word meta and all of a sudden I'm like this hot potato, you know? It is frustrating because we did the first virtual reality 6 Degrees of Freedom volumetric video, music video in 2015 on Unity with a lovely artist called Maya Payne. We did it on $5,000, and it's by definition the first in the world. You know, the data sets I sit on right behind me, you can see my NAS, just hundreds of locations that are just waiting to be produced. But as you well know, you know, we were a team of 11 a year ago, but then we ran into all the hardship of COVID, and we lost multiple staff, and quite frankly, like the worst thing that happened to us was we got that mega grant 1 year too late because of internal pushback. And as a result of that, the worst thing we could have ever had happen to us was get a whole lot of money in the middle of COVID, because New Zealand, you know, we can't fly in expertise. We can't, you know, all the Datacoms and Deloittes of the world basically gobbled up all the good staff. I mean, you know, as you well know, WET has taken basically every second one of my employees. It's just been a resource constraint issue.
What do you do when you get a no?
When I get a no, I probably post on Facebook how angry I am.
You do. And then do you ever delete your? Do you ever get like messages?
Half an hour later, realizing what I just said. Yeah.
You're just like,
yeah, dude. But I mean, I'm an artist, man, and I'm passionate, and I'm frustrated as hell, because if it wasn't for Callaghan Innovation, I'd probably be homeless right now. That's how crazy it is. Like, the hardship of being here in New Zealand has been so great, especially in my field of work. I mean, you know how much I was traveling. I was 120 flights over 3 years, location after location, working for Discovery Channel, Curiosity Stream, you know, these major universities, all this kind of jazz. And then I was literally coming back just to spend Christmas with my moo, and then I was off to Shanghai to marry my fiance, and it just never happened. And so it's been 2 years in Auckland. It's great.
So do you, when these no's happen, these experiences, where do you get the energy to keep going? Or you just you got no choice. You just got to fucking get up and go.
I mean, I have no choice. Look, I mean, as I said, I've been in negotiations left, right, and centre with multiple parties. But the thing is, and look, I had some really good offers, but I reneged on them because I had a certain level of loyalty, and I won't lie, Andy, I'm kicking myself right now. I probably should have gone open source, you know, a year ago. As a photogrammetrist myself, I want to see this tool being used by everyone. I don't want any one entity to own it. There's a lot of good open source engines out there. There's a lot of good open source web-based engines out there. There's some really good stuff. It's just that there's this big crazy money grab going on between the two major players, where, you know, where they're just buying everything up. And I guess my problem is that I was seen as kind of being in a certain camp, and to be perfectly honest with you, it hasn't done me any favors. So what's been really exciting recently is I've been getting a lot of people just sending me data sets around the world of some amazing locations. So
that's cool.
Yeah, no, and it's about bloody time. So there was this whole kind of like, data is so precious, bloody, bloody, blah. We're just going to hoard it. We're going to keep it to ourselves. But people people have kind of realized that, look, at the end of the day, the way I process the data is that much considerably better than how other people do it. You know, I don't want to use the term, and I really use this term, and I don't mean this in a harsh way, but there's been a lot of brain vaping going on. And there's been a lot of carrots and sticks, if you know what I mean. And a lot of
when you get out of this lockdown,
yeah, where am I going to next?
Where are you going to first?
I've been offered to go to Switzerland to I don't know what I can say on this one. I'm gonna say people in space who have landed back on Earth do a virtual reproduction of a certain individual that
nice.
you know is you know, he's getting on, if you know what I'm trying to say. And so we're going to do a digital twin of him and look at the ability of embedding him into a GPT freestyle network. So basically what that means is we can encapsulate someone and then essentially reanimate based on their recorded history of what they've said. So we were actually looking about a year ago with MLK for Facebook research. It's the idea that you can
MLK being Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King. The idea that
the name we weren't going to mention.
Wow. It's out there now, man. Everyone knows that Facebook dicked us on that one. They literally cancelled the project. They broke a really strong binding contract. They completely screwed us. We were 80% there. It was an amazing piece of work. It should have seen the light of day. And I'll tell you when they cancelled it, man. They cancelled it the day after the elections, November the 5th.
You know, it's interesting though. One of the things that when I spend time with you and I think and I listen, you know, a lot of people are talking about the meta world in terms of creating new environments, new experiences. The thing that's quite interesting with you is that you're bringing together the physical world and the past world into a new experience for people to engage with.
Yeah.
You know, and when we think about our rangatahi, when you think about our mokopuna, it's pretty fascinating, the opportunity that this technology and these tools gives to enable that to happen.
Look, I mean, the storytelling ability here for Indigenous Maori is friggin' amazing. Like, you look at the beach scene we did back in 2016 with We Cookies Po, and what that, you know, I mean, that was really like it still stands up as one of the most beautiful, you know, encapsulations of a real world location and some of the most amazing Polynesian artwork ever. And what we could do from this point onwards, I mean, like me personally, so I'm just out of Levin. I live in a place called Ohau. That's where my mum's farm is. And we have a place called Lake Papatonga. And Tiara was a pretty crazy cat, you know, back in the days. And there was some pretty crazy wars back in the day, you know, like between the different iwi, between the different tribes. And, you know, it's a story of legends, man. And so I have this beautiful idea of going to these locations now, recording as best we can what it is currently, and then superimposing what it would have been like back in that time, and actually reenacting in a virtual way as accurately as possible, you know, these amazing scenes of, you know, New Zealand culture, you know, pre the white man, if you know what I mean.
I mean, it's pretty. It's
well,
pretty.
I mean,
and actually, by the way, for
Yeah.
not only for our own people,
Yeah.
but for the people offshore who are interested.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So my issue with Meta, and this is where I do have to come in on this. I mean, I think everyone who's watching this right now has probably seen a sponsored advertisement from a certain company, and has, and quite frankly, in my opinion, it's probably been the worst marketing exercise ever. I just want to say that the local parties involved in that are really good people, and so we've discussed this, and quite frankly, this is our message to Meta. If you're going to do this, you know, one, you hire local, right? Two, you work with local Indigenous Maori, because otherwise your authenticity is out the fucking gate.
Yeah.
And so as a Kiwi, I say this, but as someone who's worked very closely with local iwi, and is, I'm huge fans of Lisa Rahana and James Pinker and Wee Cookie and all these brothers and sisters, Yadara, working with Orak and Madai, I can honestly say to you, the pushback even I get as a white person in New Zealand can be difficult sometimes, but my backing and my board are beautiful people who actually understand this culture quite significantly. I'm a technologist. I create the tools to allow for the storytelling, but I will not even pretend for a second that I have the rite of passage to actually be representing in that respect. And that's why you have to work with others around you in your local community to actually do this,
What have you learned? What have you learned around working with people?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I have difficulties. Being slightly Asperger's, it doesn't help me. I do suffer from communication skills. It's not easy for me, man. I mean, being albino, it's kind of a weird position to be in. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not exactly the poster child for, how do I say this? Indigenous, Maori, and cultural preservation. But I would like to say this is that I'm agnostic in the sense that, I've worked overseas with, many other cultures, working in both not Iraq, Lebanon and Egypt and other such things,
Do you think people take advantage of you and fuck you over?
Well, I mean, the whole thing with Discovery Channel was pretty intense. Like, we got paid 20K and they raised 36 million.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty
so I suppose,
I literally remember Tony Anthony Robbins talking. So there was this panel of Tony Anthony Robbins on one side and literally the guy who runs the X Prize on the other side raving about Nefertari.
Yeah.
And about how amazing it was. And there's no mention of Reality Virtual. They literally gave all the credit to Discovery Channel. And it was just like, you got to be kidding me. And then we've had this happen multiple times. Like, so we technically won a Lumia Award next to the Avengers in March of 2020. You won't find my name on that IMDb. It's our work, but so
I suppose though,
not just a New Zealand thing. We've had this happen with the Americans. We've had this happen with everyone. Everyone, and this is what I was saying to you earlier, is everyone has this tendency to, because I don't have the resources around me to be well protected, and Andy, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. If we'd had the resources at our disposal to do the legal, do the other things, all the things that you need to effectively run an NGO, we would have never ran into half this mess in the first place. So
if you're a founder interested in this meta world and you want to get into it, what's your advice and guidance? Because just create some product and release it and get it into the hands of people.
Well, I mean, what I can say is this: is that the technology, you can have the best technology in the world, and I can literally say that with some validation. I've had Sir Ian Taylor's CTO validate the work. He loves DPVR. I've had Build Media just down the road be like, this is amazing. I've had multiple entities go, this is incredible. The thing is, you can have the best technology in the world, but if you don't have a tight ship, if you don't actually have the resources to have someone who's literally working on documentation, working on legal, working on actually, and this is just due to resource constraint. Like, so any startup in New Zealand really struggles because, you can have a good idea and you can have the best technology in the world, but if you don't have representation, especially in New Zealand where funds are limited, you can get screwed over very quickly, very fast. You can have the highest profile on the internet. You can be called a VR rockstar. You can be all those things, Andy. But if you don't actually have someone like an agent or someone literally looking out for your back, it's next to impossible to get through the noise. And what I mean by the noise is that every time RV thought we had something good, it always ended up being we would have this like older white man kind of come in and know all the people and shake all the hands, and then we would just get, they would just, it's the Wild West, man. And on top of that, New Zealand being such a small place, you just run into this kind of like tall poppy syndrome, where people, like, as soon as you are doing cool stuff, because there's a small, what I refer to as a small pot of gold, you just get this real kind of bickery kind of behavior. And I didn't get that overseas. So,
so you need to go where the energy is, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, as you well know, I was moving my whole entire business to Calvert City in March the 11th, 2020, but then they closed the blimmin' borders. So, I mean, this is why I have so much respect for Ian Taylor right now. Like, what Sir Ian Taylor's doing, he's
incredible.
He understands my frustration, and so we talk, and he knows it. Also, Nick Taylor, his nephew, was one of my staff for many years, and now he's working for Weta.
Do you know what I love about Ian is that he is prepared to stand up and do and to talk and to share and to challenge. Now, what high school did you go to?
So I'm terrible with words.
Horowhenua.
Horowhenua.
We know.
Dude,
so
I have a speech impediment. I mean, seriously.
My question for you is, take yourself back to that 15-year-old equivalent student of you, someone who's creative, someone who's interested in tech and gaming today. What would, in this context of the meta world, what would be your advice to that 15-year-old?
Get the fuck out of Levin.
But you can get out of Levin in the virtual world.
I mean, there's something to be said about being where the energy is good. So what I do love about the States is, I engage. I mean, like, I was, as you well know, I was, speaking at South by Southwest and GDC and GDC and SIGGRAPH and all that kind of stuff. The energy of actually just running around the conferences and hang out with the CTO of Boeing and, just being around people who actually allow creativity to take fruition, everyone's very happy just living at a nice beach house here and just having a bar job. It's really hard to think big in a country where the standard of living is comfortable, if that makes any sense. And so sometimes you'll find the best locations are the locations where people are actually having to strive, if that makes any sense.
Do you think to succeed in this meta world, you have to be technical?
Well, you have to be artistic and a little bit autistic. I don't know, man. Like, I would say that
if you want to be a product leader, like if you want to create product, you got to understand how this
shit works. You're trying to build the platform versus trying to build the content for that platform.
Yeah.
Or trying to build the tools that help the content, migrate to that platform. So, obviously Epic bought, sorry, it's just my mind's gone a bit blank. Sketchfab recently, right? So you've got a lot of people uploading content and putting it into this thing where others can use. It's like the turbo squid of it's the turbo squid, right? So tools need to be available, but at the end of the day, the way I see it and the way I can tell you the way it's going, especially with photogrammetry, is like, if we were to integrate my tools into certain pipelines of other people's tools right now, people would be scanning stuff left, right, and center, and it would be pretty disruptive. You wouldn't really need specialists because the AI basically solves it. And so,
does that mean, if I think about this longer term with this open source environment, does that mean I'll be able to come to a marketplace and go, cool, I want to put Paris into my game, in my virtual reality, or the Eiffel Tower, or this scene in New York, and I'll be able to buy that and pay for that?
Well, I mean, so the way we saw it back in the day, and once again, to go back to my TED talk, we talked extensively about artist rights management. So the idea is that you would be able to sell something. Well, sell is not the right word. You would be able to put something out there, but you would be able to flag certain conditions based on what you felt its use case was acceptable for. As I like to say, you don't want to have stripper poles and mid-eyes, right? So someone could scan a mid-eye, but you would have it as part of your digital ledger, right? As part of the blockchain transferable, you couldn't break certain rules. And this is extremely important because, as I said, I spent a lot of time in a lot of Middle Eastern countries and other such locations where, if I was just to go off and do that, my last location was, the Large Hadron Collider. I'm sitting on the star set back there, of the LHC, and I don't think that LHC would appreciate us, having Pokemon running around, damaging all the equipment. So, it's kind of like, it's kind of like you can call it Creative Commons, but with certain conditions in play, depending on. And the monetary gain comes from the fact that if people do that, then you have the ability to license. So let's say The Mandalorian or any one of these other, like let's say you're a studio in New Zealand and you want to film a scene in Japan, right? In some alleyway. The person who took the photographs to encapsulate that can give you permission, and then that person who took the photographs get royalties. It's just like radio play. So, going back to my music, I had a lot of radio play back in the late.
It's pretty cool if you think about that.
Yeah. It's like APRA, dude. Like, if someone licenses your product, you get a check in the mail. It might only be, this much or that much, but depending on the scale of the product. So let's say a major studio needs a scene. Instead of them sending 40 people to the location to do it, we can, under Reality Virtual, essentially coordinate crowdsourcing of that data, process it. RV takes a small cut for the processing and blah, 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 but essentially the vast majority of the money goes back to the artist.
Love it.
Yeah. We're basically the Apple iTunes store of environments. That's the way we see it. That's the way we want to see it. But I can tell you this: everyone else now has this, idea. But my concern is that they are going about it completely wrong. Meta's a very walled garden, to put it that way.
Yeah. So, what next for you?
I'm working on this current project with this amazing artist. His name's Snick. He's got a pretty huge following on Instagram. So he handed me a bunch of data a few weeks ago of this amazing art gallery, but no one got to see in London because of lockdown. And it's the most beautiful and heartbreaking. There's this video, but I can't show anyone yet because we haven't put it out yet. But it makes you cry every time. It's like these artists put this amazing amount of work into the scene, and no one got to see it. And then the building was demolished the next day. We have a exact digital replica down to the fibers of the cloth of the canvases. And it's photorealistic in real time. It's unbelievable. Mark Petit of Epic Games, super excited about it, but who knows what's going to happen. It's, as far as I'm concerned, it's a passion project. There's no money exchanging hands. I'm just doing this because it's cool. After that, I've been asked to go to central China to scan a certain location that I cannot disclose. And then from China, I'll probably go to Switzerland and deal with this cosmonaut. Yeah.
So does that mean on the plane in the new year or before the end of the year?
I was going to fly out a few weeks ago, but I'll be honest with you, man, after hearing this whole you can't get back to April thing, I'm probably going to spend Christmas with my moo and with my parents, and maybe fly out maybe January, February. Yeah.
How old's Moo? 14?
Oh, turning 14 now. Yeah. Dude, she's almost as tall as I am. It's fucking crazy.
That means she's grown a lot in the last 18 months.
Well, she's got my Dutch genes. I mean, I feel like a midget. Like, I'm actually terrified. Like, she's probably going to be taller than I am. I'm 6 foot, man.
It's a beautiful thing having the opportunity and the blessings that you get by having a child or caring for someone, right?
Yeah.
And seeing how they grow.
It happened so fast, dude. It was like, you know, I do feel for her. Like, she entered this, you know, adolescence when we all went into lockdown, and now she's like, you know,
Yeah,
fully teen, and you know, she's missed so much schooling. I mean, like, it's been hard. You know, it's just, I can't imagine what that. I mean, you know, I had struggles between 11 to 14, but nothing like this. I mean, it's, you know, she's lost a lot of time, and I'm hoping she can make it up. So,
hey, Simon, I really enjoyed the conversation and spending time with you. It's always good to see you, even if it's a virtual reality across a computer. And it does feel like yesterday. That was last year with Nicky Williamson.
This would be if we were doing this with Deep Mirror right now.
I know.
Yeah.
Like Deep Mirror gives you the impression. One of the things that's pretty amazing with this tech
I can look around you. Yep.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? And you don't have to look up to the top of the screen to get the. You look straight.
My camera would automatically correct. So I'm looking at you, but my camera's like, I'm on a 65-inch TV. My camera would automatically correct my eye point, so it's looking directly at you. Yeah. So,
that tech's got to get into the world. Hey, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Andy. I really appreciate it.
We didn't tell too many secrets. We're not going to get sued.
I'll get back to you on that one.
Make sure you're on the plane.
I'm going to make sure I'm out of the country before anything happens.
all the best, bro. Hey, and everyone, just to the community, thank you very much. We've got John Henderson from Airtree, who's a Web3 VC, coming at 11 o'clock New Zealand time tomorrow. Awesome week next week with Sam from Method Studios and Jessica Mannins from Beyond Games. And then 3 more to go before Christmas, before we wrap up from the Real Talks, and pretty excited for that. So including some people out of the US who are going to be amazing, called Rahila and Nick, who've got a pretty epic Web3 project. So everyone, have a great rest of the day. Thank you very much. Thank you, Simon. See you, bro.
It was awesome.
Take it easy.
Thanks, bud.
See ya.
Yeah.
Bye.